Brilliant. Okay, we'll just give it another minute or two as sort of people are still drifting in. Fine, and then we'll go from there. So I think most of you are probably watching along on your browser. Is that right?
Yeah.
And you can just see, yeah. So for most of you, you'll just be able to see one person at a time, and it should just be whoever's talking. So it won't always be me. It's probably in everyone's best interest. Okay, perfect. So I'm sure we might get a few more people dripping in as it goes. I've turned the lobby off so people can come straight in. First off, hello and welcome to this evening's kind of session. As I was saying earlier, and I'll just sort of say again for anyone who missed it, we're trialing something a bit new for this evening, in that it's less of a presentation from me, and it's more about a kind of, we're going to have a couple of little talks from a few groups, and then more of a discussion about you've done as groups to sort of get things going since kind of COVID, a bit of spanner in the works, and taking a little bit of a focus on how you attract and kind of train up new ride leaders, and kind of get people, you know, how do you take someone who's come for their first group ride and sculpt them into a super ride leader that can then sort of keep the wheels turning, I suppose, to sort of be a bit corny about it. So a little bit of a tour of Teams. Try and not say that too quickly. Most of you are on your browser, as far as I'm aware, so you should have an options bar kind of towards the middle. You might need to give your mouse a little bit of a wobble for it to appear. It kind of sort of hides itself after a bit of activity. So along there, the kind of the main options to be aware of is you should have, I think, so from the left, it should be in this order, is a little icon of 2 people, which will show the participants. That just shows you who's in the meeting at the moment. We've got the little speech bubble, which shows the chat, so you can type stuff in there. So please do feel free to, if you have questions that you sort of don't want to say out loud or whatnot, or little things to add mid conversational flow from somewhere else, please do pop it in there. One of the most important ones is there's a little icon of a sort of smiley face with a hand up, and there you'll find the option to raise your hand, like I've just done. So what this does is it puts a little gold box around your kind of your picture, and it just notifies us that you have something to say. So it's really useful if you either have something to add or a question to ask after the person's finished talking, but you don't want to kind of interrupt what they're saying. And you can, once you've raised your hands, you can lower it same way. The other ones to be aware of are the mute option, which is the kind of the little image of a microphone. If we could ask everyone to keep themselves muted if you're not talking, just because that kind of helps with echo and background noise. I do always have the option to mute people, but I can't unmute you, just in case you're saying something naughty. So I find it's better to let people mute themselves, because then at least they know where the button is. So they should be kind of in the middle, and on the right, normally you'll have the big red leave button, which you won't need till the very end, hopefully. That's Teams. Hopefully you've all kind of found everything there. So the format of this evening, I'm going to stop talking very shortly, and we're going to hear from 2 groups. So we've got Mike from the Barnt Green Chain Gang group, and we've got Miriam from Joyriders. So they're just going to sort of do a sort of 5-minute or so little talk about what their group do, how they train up ride leaders, and sort of you know, take new riders and induct them, and then sort of recognise that these people are good potential ride leaders, and kind of that sort of journey they take people on, and just a little bit of background about their kind of groups. So I think if we kick off with Mariam, so she's from Joyriders. So they are a London sort of started group, but now kind of expanding, focusing on kind of female women cyclists, but sort of that kind of newer people, probably not cyclist, bike user, probably should say. Yeah, I'll let take it away. So what I'll do is I'll just.
Hiya.
Yes, yeah, over to
you. Yeah, hi, I'm Mariam from Joyriders. Joyriders started in 2016 as a very small group, just a few women really cycling together as friends, and more and more women joined over time, and we came to the point where we wanted to have things a bit more formal. So we basically took the best cyclists of us and turned them into white leaders. They attended white leader training outside of Joyriders, and that was all good and nice. And now we are much bigger. So over time we grew. We had more people participating, and we expanded also to different areas. So we really thought about how we can train white leaders up in an efficient way, and in a way that it works for us and for the white leaders. So we came up with our own white leader training, and there are basically two ways of training we are offering. So one is really asking for white leaders on social media for women who are interested to become white leaders, or women who are already riding with us, and when we see they have the potential to be a white leader, approaching them and asking them, do you want to be a white leader? They often come on the whites anyways, so why not let them help out? So once we have women who agree to be white leaders and volunteer for us, we have our own white leader training, which is very flexible. We have an online program, which is all about processes and procedures, which they can do in their own time. We offer first aid training, again, which is online at the moment, but which will be in person again, hopefully sometime soon. But again, we'll try to make it as flexible as possible so that they can really do it when it suits them. And yeah, then there's obviously white assessments and on white trainings. But I think the most important thing is really let them decide when they are happy to do whites, so that you really accommodate them. Make sure they're happy to the type of whites they want to lead. So we offer a whole load of whites. We have beginners, intermediate, advanced whites. We have whites in the evenings, on the weekends, weekdays, and not everyone can do all type of whites. And we really create whites at times when our white leaders want, and we ask them also to help us with route creation so that they can really involve them in a lot of our day-to-day running where they want to be involved, so that they really feel part of Joyriders and not just coming on a ride, leading the ride, and that's it, and kind of feel they're not involved. And I think that's really important to have that involvement, to have that input from them. And obviously some are more involved than others. We have over time in the last few months, we've trained over 80 white leaders in different locations. We went physically up to locations like Manchester and Oxford, meet with them in person to help them get started up their groups. And I think really having that in place, that personal, one-to-one also for each white leader. We have a mentoring system as well, so each white leader is assigned to a more experienced white leader so that they can discuss any issues that come up, and they do come up sometimes. Not everything is perfect. We had in the past that white leader had arguments with each other and things like that. So it does happen. So having mentors in place where you can talk to and where you can feel like you can just chat about certain issues is really important. But I think generally the most important thing is make it as accessible as possible. We started up new groups, and one thing we really noticed, what is really important, to have someone in a new group who is like a group champion, who hold things back kind of together, who make sure that communications are followed up, that there's a wide schedule, that people sign up for whites, talk things through. That's really important. We made the mistake in one group that we didn't have a champion and thought we could do it ourselves, and it didn't work out so well. So lessons learned. And we're really waiting now for people to come to us. So we have people, sometimes it's a smaller group in a location who don't really have any concept yet, who approach us and who want to have a bit of help, or it's one person in a location who said, look, I really want to get involved. I want to start up a new group. And then we really say, look, if you want to do that, we're really helping you. We're putting everything in place for you, but you need to be the champion at the location. And that is something which works really well. And we have now several locations where we're starting up rides where we have this champion in place. And so far, so good. I think you're muted, Tom.
Yes.
Yes. You're muted again.
There we go. Hope that's better. I was clicking it and then clicking it again because I'm too impatient. And so that is muting again. Brilliant. Yeah, thank you very much. Just before we kind of move on, I mean, does anyone have any questions or anything to kind of add to that for Marianne? About kind of the way they organise, obviously sort of a fairly new group. I think was it 2008 or 2009 you started, and obviously it's shot to the moon in terms of participants.
We started 2016.
2016. There
Yes,
we go.
It's really not, and we were fairly small until the first lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
We really just had a weekly ride in Waltham Forest, and then once lockdown hit and we got online, we noticed that a lot of people approached us from different locations and wanted to join as well, and we just started up all those groups in that really last year, which yeah, it was a lot of work, but I think well worth it.
Brilliant. So yeah, if you do have questions, you can either pop them in the chat, or if you pop your hand up, if you pop them in the chat, I suppose I can sort of shout them out, or you can put your hand up and then unmute yourself.
I can see some questions. Yeah, do you have a limit on the numbers of riders on a ride? Yes, we do have a limit. It's depending on the ride, it's between 1 to 4 to 1 to 8. So beginner's ride, we ideally have one ride leader for 4 participants, and on an intermediate or advanced ride, it is 1 to 8. And we tried not to have larger numbers than 15 on a ride. I think it just makes it too big. We do have larger rides, which are family rides, where we have bigger groups if permitted. But that's then whole families on rides, which is really completely off-road and with more ride leaders. So that's a bit different types of ride. But yeah, otherwise 15. And then what content do you focus in your own ride leader training, please? So we have 2 types of content. One is the online program, which is really about all our processes and procedures. It's about things when which app do we use for our routes, what you're going to do if there's an adverse weather situation, what to do if there's an incident, all those really practical things which are really addressed. And we laminate those processes as well for people to take on the ride, how to write up a risk assessment, how to use a risk assessment, how to use we use Komoot to navigate on our rides. But yeah, really all those kind of sort of practical things which is kind of based on paper, but which you should know. And we have kind of like little online modules. We use Slack for that, which is an app as well, which you can use online. And people go one by one through the modules. There are 7 modules, and they can really do it when it suits them. It's really in their own time. Do you ask riders to pre-register with COVID, etc.? And how do you limit numbers to 15? I think that's quite similar questions. So we use Eventbrite for people to sign up, and that's how we limit the numbers. Before, now at the moment, we can take 15 people with us, or we could 30, I think now. But before, the numbers were limited to 6. So we had actually 2 ride leaders and 4 riders on the ride. And Eventbrite is really a tool where you can limit numbers to how few you want. Do you do any ongoing training for your ride leaders? So we do come on rides ourselves occasionally when we can, and we always look how ride leaders are doing. We update on processes and procedures. If there's anything that gets flagged up, we update as well. We do a monthly Zoom meeting with our ride leaders just to kind of have that contact as well, and really try and stay in touch as much as possible. How long are your rides? So that depends. Our shortest rides are around 5 miles. That are beginners rides for people who just learned how to ride a bike, and they go up to 25 miles, 30 miles for advanced rides, which are longer. And yeah, for people who want to go the longer rides, we have commuter rides, which is really kind of from the outskirts of London into the city, kind of things for people who want to ride to work. So yeah, but there is something for everyone really, from complete beginners to more advanced. What we don't do is kind of things like club rides. It's really women going on a social ride. We have a coffee stop in between. Apart from evening and commuter rides, there's a coffee stop. We have coffee and cake, and then we ride back. So the social side is also very important on rides.
Brilliant. Cool. Yeah, thank you very much for that. We'll have more time kind of, we'll sort of move on to Mike and the Barnt Green Chain Gang next, but we'll have plenty of time kind of afterwards where if there's anyone else, you know, in this, you know, meeting who sort of would have a slightly different answer to one of those questions, we'd love to sort of, can't speak today, to hear from you. So yeah, so next week, yeah, we're going to move on to Mike, as I said, from Barnt Green Chain Gang. So they're actually a running and cycling group, kind of do a bit of both. Obviously, the Chain Gang is the sort of the cycling side of things. And yeah, so I'll hand it over to you, Mike.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Yeah, well, we're based up in the Midlands. We're kind of midway between Birmingham and Worcester. Just on the south of the Birmingham boundary. So we're quite lucky in as much that we've got lots of lovely riding around here, because we're kind of right on the kind of the boundary of kind of Warwickshire. So there's lots of rides around Warwickshire, and also some lovely rides around Worcestershire as well. So the running kind of side of the club started about 15 years ago, but then the cycling followed 6 or 7 years later, and a bit like the last group, really, it started to grow quite quickly. We're based, it sounds like the other group is more kind of spread out in different locations, but we're actually based at a sports club. So in actual fact, you need to be a member of the sports club to kind of be part of the club, but there are benefits of that, because there is the bar and there's, you know, the social element as well. And like the last group, you know, we place a great emphasis on the kind of the social side of the club. We're really pleased that we've been able to maintain a really good balance between male and female kind of membership, because I know, you know, quite a lot of clubs tend to be dominated by kind of blokes and whatever, but we've managed to kind of keep a good balance, and we've got about 60 members now. Doesn't sound like it's anything like as big as the last group, but 60 plus members, and on a, obviously not all riding at the same time, but on a kind of a cold evening like we've had recently, we get about 30 riders out, and as we get to the warmer weather, we'd hope to have about 50 out. We've got a kind of a structure in the club, a bit like the last group, where we've got beginners through to advanced, and we've got about five levels of groups, and you know, on a busy night there could be about 7 groups going out, and similar to the last group, we place a limit. Obviously we've had a limit of 6 just recently, but we tend to keep it no more than 10, because as they said, it just becomes unmanageable. We have a Wednesday night, that's our main club night, that's when we have our main club ride, which is great, and then we also do occasional kind of Saturday rides as well. But obviously with the growth of the club, we then had to kind of try and support the group, so we needed to kind of develop ride leaders to support that. And the way we've done that is very similar as well, is that we've kind of, like, whether it be targeted people or people have naturally kind of seem to kind of have some ride leader qualities and whatever, then we've encouraged them to become ride leaders. So kind of a big emphasis for us is our kind of mantra of a club, if you like, is that nobody cycles on their own, because in some cycling clubs you can get kind of spat out of the back, and it's not very pleasant if you're not, you know, cycling as a group. So that's something we pride ourselves in, is all of the groups go out together and they all return together. And we felt that so kind of part of the focus of the ride leaders is to try and make sure that they can do that they can confidently take a group out that's safe, and also that they can keep them together and also give them a great ride. So the kind of almost the culture of the club was quite an important thing to try and kind of communicate and keep going with the ride leaders. And then obviously with having ride leaders available became really important, obviously with COVID, because of obviously limiting the groups to even smaller numbers. So that's a kind of a bit of a snapshot of the club. We also, in terms of new riders who join the club, we do an intro session for people who are joining the club. We just find that helps with it's partly from a safety point of view, because we do find that some people, if they've been used to riding on their own, and sometimes it's the more experienced solo riders that can be the most problematic, because they're used to just kind of riding how they like to ride. We've found that it's really useful to kind of just introduce them into kind of how to ride in a group, but do it in an intro session so that they can ask questions, and they can, you know, if they want to make mistakes, they can do them in the intro session rather than on a club night when there's many more people around. But it's also a chance for us to go through the membership arrangements, insurance, and also for some people it's a chance, you know, they may not be that familiar with their bikes, so it's a chance just to kind of support them with some initial kind of bike stuff to start with. So that's the kind of quick overview of the club, if you like. In terms of the ride leader program, then we've kind of developed that ourselves. We've put it together probably about 5 years ago. And it's a kind of the main thrust of it is a one-off session. It's about a 3-hour session where we meet with the people who are going through the ride leader training. And as I said, the focus, apart from obviously trying to make sure that they feel confident that they can lead safe group rides and also kind of become familiar with routes, the big part of the big emphasis is some of the skills in keeping people together, you know, getting people to use their gears so they're not all strung out, or, you know, that the hills don't kind of blow the whole kind of groups apart and that kind of thing. And also kind of keeping it fun, you know, just trying to make sure, like the last group, that, you know, you've got coffee stops organised and everybody's having their traditional tea and cake and whatever. So that's great. And we've got probably we've trained up about 20 people on that programme. And out of that 20, obviously not all are active at any, but we've got about 10 or 12 that do an absolutely fantastic job in kind of taking the groups out. In fact, tonight is our club night, so they'll be kind of meeting up any time now to kind of to go out tonight, and they take out groups and have great rides, and then they all kind of return to the club. I think one of the things that we've found with the ride leader training is that a lot of the ride leaders who've done the training said it was a really useful thing to go through anyway. And probably what we'll do now is we'll invite people who haven't necessarily want to ride lead, but a lot of them have said it would be really useful to involve them, because they then understand what the ride leaders are trying to achieve. And like your last group, you can get some people who are a bit kind of headstrong and whatever, and perhaps don't appreciate the responsibility that a ride leader has got to kind of lead a safe ride. So if they're all a bit more knowledgeable, then that helps. So we might kind of start widening it out, if you like. I think the other thing that we've found really important, and it sounds again similar to the last group, is that there's this kind of myth that you have to be really experienced or a fast rider or a very, very, very good rider to be a ride leader. And of course, it's not a question of that. A lot of people have got the basic skills to lead a group of a level that they're capable of leading. And if they go through the training and they get that confidence, then that, that we found that, quite well, many of our ride leaders are relatively new to cycling. They're not, they're not like hard-nosed, long-in-the-tooth cyclists necessarily. So that's something we found is really good, is that we've been able, people have been able to take it up relatively early in their kind of cycling experience, if you like. The other thing as well that I think has helped is that what it's done is it's also not just developed ride leaders, it's also developed leaders within the club. And I mean, a lot of them they're all very capable people in their own right. Obviously, they've got, whether it be they're just their personal circumstances or their work, so they're obviously very capable anyway. But I think what the ride leading did was just give them a bit more confidence in a cycling setting. And with that confidence, they've gone on to, we've got we have a kind of it probably works out at about quarterly meetings of a little steering group for Chain Gang, and that we've got a group of who've pretty much mostly come from the ride leader group. We've got a little steering group and they are kind of like real key leaders in the club now. And they kind of pick up kind of themes across the club. Jude kind of picked up, she kind of dealt with a lot of the COVID arrangements, and she also kind of organises the weekend rides. Another one of the steering groups, Sarah, she deals with the kit. Michelle deals with kind of the registers and stuff that we now take and kind of keeping track on membership. Ed with insurance, Pete with starts of sessions, and we've got some like Simon, who's kind of really good on the mechanical side, and then we've got Sedge as well, who kind of deals with all the social media as well. So not only have we got kind of people that are leading the individual rides, we've got people that are now real key leaders, in taking the club forward and keeping it successful and keeping it alive, which is great. So it makes for kind of quite a healthy and strong club, really. So that I think those 2 points about, you don't have to be kind of an established rider to do it, and you also, it might just kind of provide other leaders for the club to take the club forward. We found that really useful. So yeah, that's yeah. Okay.
So
I can see so shall I show that conversation?
brilliant. Yeah, thank you very much for that, Mike. Very interesting. So maybe it's easier if I shout out the questions.
Yeah.
And then go from there. So I think Rob asked something about documentation, which they do in fact have, and I can share that later. So one of the questions from Jim is do you have back markers or sweepers on your rides as standard?
Yeah, we tend to kind of always try and have somebody that's kind of like at the front and the back of the group, because actually the people at the back of the group can see a lot of what is going on, and if people are struggling or if they're perhaps riding a little wide or whatever. But it certainly helps if we have that. Yeah.
Brilliant. And then so Mark, I suppose this is more of a general question from Mark, saying that we've heard of a couple of quite large and successful groups. So what methods do you find are most effective for attracting new members kind of in the first place?
We're quite a local group. Slightly different, it sounds, from the previous group, but we're quite local, so a lot of it is word of mouth, and people kind of inquire about us. We do have a website, so we attract a little bit through that. Social media, we have Facebook pages for our running and our cycling groups. Those are quite active as well. So yeah, but we're not a huge club. So we kind of like, and we also, I think a couple of years ago, we kind of reached a limit where we felt we couldn't really cope with many more people, and that's partly because we're based in a club, but also just the safety of, we're kind of in a kind of we're just outside of the kind of the southern suburbs of Birmingham, so we're kind of semi-rural, but we're kind of quite close to all the country lanes and stuff. And obviously, if we're all heading out, on one of the evenings, there comes a point where it's almost like too many kind of cyclists just flooding the roads type of thing. So we kind of feel we've got like a natural level of numbers, but yeah, we seem to attract quite a few people. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant, thanks. And if anyone else, you think you've done something as a group that actually works really well and kind of resulted in sort of new members sort of appearing, do let us know. Yeah, so we've got David Matthews, pop your hand up.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
I just wanted to ask, who's actually making the decision that ride leaders are competent to ride leads, and to what extent is the liaison with CTC, CUK, to ensure that we do have a consistent standard for ride leaders across all the organisations?
Yeah, so I suppose I can probably speak to that a little bit, and then maybe hand it over to one of our sort of other groups. So in terms of Cycling UK member groups, there's no kind of, for the insurance particularly, there's no there are qualifications you can get as a ride leader, or I think it's called a group leader, but you don't need any qualifications to sort of be covered by the insurance. Traditionally, Cycling UK / CTC, we've always had this sort of proposer and seconder system where sort of two members of the group, often committee members, but not always, have sort of proposed and seconded someone as a competent ride leader. And I suppose that's always been our kind of natural way of two other people who aren't that ride leader sort of saying, yeah, you know what, Bob is a pretty good ride leader and we're sort of happy with him. So it's always been sort of fairly self-policing in that manner for Cycling UK. And so sort of to that point, sort of incidents and issues are very rare, and when they do occur, it's very rarely kind of the ride leader's kind of lack of ability. It's normally an accident, really. So that's for the sort of the member group side of things. I wonder if there's anyone else from sort of any of our affiliate groups who sort of have a different way of sort of assigning that badge of status.
Can I?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, please.
Yeah, I think one of the things, so we go on rides, we really try, me and my co-directors, we really try to go on rides as much as possible, especially when we have new ride leaders on rides, which are usually teamed up with more experienced ride leaders. And just go on the ride, not as a ride leader, but really to observe the ride leaders. So that's one way. Another way is really also when we get in touch with them, when we get to know them, it's really looking at personality as well. So we have had some ride leaders, we let them go because we found that the way they try to handle things doesn't really fit in with how we would like things to handle. And as I said before, we did had once that the ride leaders had an argument on a ride, which obviously wasn't great. And so since then, we are very careful, not just about the riding ability and the leading skills, but also about kind of personal skills which come with that. So that's really important to take into account as well. For us, it's also really important that ride leaders are very supportive of our riders. So not just riding at the front and riding at the back and that's it, but that they really give help as well. A lot of our people have issues with how to use the gears, how to start off, how to stop properly, and all the things. So really being able to help with that as well. And we're looking at that they have those skills. And as I said, you really want to make sure they kind of all round fit as person.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, is there anything else anyone else sort of could add to that?
Tom, is it?
Yeah.
I think I think there are some kind of key kind of core kind of elements of kind of ride leading that probably I would think most people apply. You know, there seems to be some fairly standard things, but then you kind of want to also wrap around it your kind of like the culture of your club and how you operate. But it's difficult striking that balance because you're dealing with volunteers and this isn't coaching. This is kind of like supporting people on social rides. So it's difficult to strike that balance between, you know, being overly structured and overly monitoring, if you like, and as well as, you know, embracing people who are good enough to give up their time to lead rides. And I think we kind of generally feel that if people are, if our riders are kind of happy, then, you know, and they're enjoying the rides, then that kind of says a lot. And if they, you know, we do have kind of, like I said, those quarterly meetings, or even, well, we've got a ride leaders group, and issues do crop up, and we kind of get together and try and discuss those. But it is an interesting one, but it's trying to strike that balance, I think.
And Sarah Wood, your hand up. You're still muted there, Sarah.
Hi, I've been leading rides for a little while now. I used to lead them with Breeze, but I have some Cycle UK training, and I'm also a national standards instructor. I'm pretty active in that. And we've just left British Cycling as a group because we were fed up with the admin, the lists, the risk assessments, the first aid training, the evidence, blah, 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 blah. And we also wanted to be more inclusive. And we've just set up our own group called Ride Rushmore, which has come out of Ash Velo, which was a Cycling UK set up group, Rushmore Cycle Forum, maybe a U3A thing, and just established people in our area that want to get people riding in Rushmore. And we've got, Rushmore is a Rushmore Borough Council, it's Farnborough and Aldershot, and we've got ward councillors, and we're managing to get some support from ward councillors now. So we've got our voluntary Ride Rushmore led rides, which are like pop-up rides, and we've got a Facebook page, so you just put up a ride when you want to lead a ride, and then you just get an I'm in, or sorry, not this time type of thing. There's a group there is an element of trying to make it more formal and have a closed Facebook page and use Eventbrite, but we'd be lucky to get up to 15. So we I think we just celebrate and split into two halves if we got to that big number. So that's worked really quite well. And we've just set up Ride Rushmore confidence sessions now. And so we go to a ward, like in Aldershot, we'll go to the Princess Hall and a central place within the ward, and then find a car park or a quiet cul-de-sac or something, and deal with confidence sessions then. And then for some people find a junction, and then some people will move on and do a little ride. And because we'll have several ride leaders with us, we can split a bit. So if somebody can't ride a bike, somebody will work with them. If people want to do junction work and work out where primary position is and blah, 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 we can do that. And then we'll go off for a little ride. So we're quite flexible with that. And that's working. And try and choose for every ward, try and get the ward councillors involved. And for every ward, choose a in-your-face sort of place and start claiming the streets a bit so that they're not used for everything else. And then, so for example, in North Camp, which is where I live, we've got an area called the Old Lynchford Road, and they're planning to put a big junction in there. Well, I'm going to use that for Ride Rushmore to try and claim that space and say, look, this is what it can be used for. Sorry, I'm ranting on a bit now, but I want to also try and get away from, I mean, from that advanced beginners and whatever ride, just get people riding their bikes. And gosh, if they could ride to the station or ride to the shops, that would be my aim. Start thinking about using their bike for transport. And it's really hard leaving Breeze. It's really hard leaving British Cycling, because I'm now finding I'm with quite strong-minded individuals, and some might come from church groups, some might come from this group, and we need to get a constitution in place so we're all singing from the same sheet, so to speak, because we're all so different. Some are really into high-vis and helmets, some are into lycra, some aren't, you know, so it's trying to be as inclusive as we possibly can be. And I'd have everybody riding in flip-flops, you know, just because that's when I did my VSO placement in Guyana. That's when I started riding a bike, and I rode in a dress with flip-flops, and that's how I did it. And when I started riding in Europe, I rode around the whole of Europe with my bike clock over my handlebars, not realizing that that was completely the wrong thing to do with the dangly bit, you know, and I survived. And so that's how I want to promote cycling. It's an everyday thing. You really, really don't need your first aid, because actually if somebody fell off and broke their arm, you call for an ambulance. You know, when I do my national standards instruction, I've got a first aid kit, but I've used a sling for some kid that had a nosebleed, but that's all I've used. You know, I'm just trying to normalise it all, not big it up. Just try and get everybody doing little journeys on their own. And we're just starting, and it might all go horribly wrong. I don't know. I don't think it will. But it's nice to get the council involved and the councillors involved, even if they're right-wing Tories. You know, try and bring them in on board. Anyway, rant over.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. And I suppose we've kind of seen there's a bit of a pattern there with all these sort of three groups we've heard from so far. All have these kind of introductory sessions at sort of. I mean, I suppose it's quite easy for quite a few of us to sort of consider, you know, riding a bike and on roads particularly just to be quite not really something we often think about. You know, I've sort of been cycling to school since I was, you know, old enough to ride a bike. Obviously not now still riding to school, that'd be strange. But it's something that we very much take for granted. And actually, yeah, that road confidence is something that's often taken for granted. And definitely is a skill and onto itself.
One thing I want to say is we are going to do the big bike ride thing on the 30th. But we're just going to choose a location. It's Wellington Monument in Rushmore. But so whatever group you are, whether you're a road group or whether you're a beginner group, and I set up a 5 o'clock rides in times of COVID, because at 5 o'clock in the evening all the roads were quiet. So we've got the 5 o'clock group, and we've got the Wednesday morning group, and we've got the U3A. So we're all going to cycle to this monument, whatever group you are. You can have a mountain bike group, you know, you can have the old codgers group, whatever, and try and all get to the Wellington Monument for a certain period of time, so you can celebrate cycling in all its forms. That's the other thing we're trying to do. Does it matter now how many people that actually get to the monument if you choose a place, Tom?
So what do you mean in terms of just numbers on a ride, or?
I don't care about that. Look at the traffic jams, people in cars. I mean, I don't get that, really, not that much. Under COVID rules, then obviously we had to. But if people ride in small groups and let traffic overtake and give them gaps and things, then I think that's the best you can do. The fact that a lot of people might cycle together, you know, drivers have just got to deal with that, I think.
Definitely. I mean, so there's kind of official Cycling UK guidance, and it is guidance. You know, we don't have any strict limit on numbers. We sort of would recommend if you've got more than 12 to 15 on a ride, you kind of think about splitting it into. But it very much depends on the roads you're on. You know, if you're off road, you know, particularly your groups could be much larger.
And also you can, once you get to know the area, you can choose different routes. Like we had today, somebody with a recumbent, and he couldn't use the cycle path because it was too narrow. So we split. Well, I'll take this guy on the road here. You can choose that path if you want, and we'll meet up there. So once you get to know your areas, you can split and reform. That's another way of doing it.
Cool.
But I think the way forward is also to give your riders, and obviously you've got to look after them, especially if they're learning, but also give your riders the opportunity to gain independence, which is what British Cycling didn't used to do. The total responsibility for managing the ride was with the ride leaders. So, you know, you have to manage the junctions, manage the doubling up, and really care for your people. And that's fine, you can do that. But at the same time, you want to try and encourage your riders to gain independence, so that they can start thinking about their routes, thinking about their journeys, and hey, you know, get to the shops on their own one day down the line sometime, and then treat their bike as a vehicle.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So I just kind of looking at the chat, just sort of rewind a little bit to a few questions. So there's one from Janet about Cycling UK offering ride leader training for free to volunteers and groups, or sort of at least doing them cheaper. We're actually in the process of kind of restructuring the training department. I don't really know too much about it, but that is sort of, I think the plan is to have something maybe not free, but along those lines. But I sort of bit out of my area of expertise, but I would definitely pass it on. And then we've got a bit of conversation and a sort of side by question from Jim about having routes for new ride leaders. I suppose that kind of extends to not just new ride leaders, but just to sort of the question of routes in general. What are sort of people's, you know, do people prefer, or have they noticed a preference for sort of set routes? We do this route to this cafe, and sort of planning them well ahead, or is it more of an ad hoc thing for the groups? So we've got Vicky with the hand up. You might be muted if you're. I can't actually see you, Vicky.
Hi.
Yeah, there we go.
Hi. Okay. We've tried to make our website work a lot better for all sorts of people, whether they're complete beginners and want a short 2 or 3 mile ride. We've got a little archive for them, but also we've got an archive for new ride leaders for the sort of lengths of ride that they want to, and an archive of all our long rides, because we're finding that we've got some younger men coming in who want to ride quite fast actually, and they like the long ride, so they're going to our archives for that. So actually storing the rides that we use, we're kind of able to recycle them. Some people want to do their own rides, but actually some people feel more confident knowing that this ride has worked for others. So making the website work for us has helped us.
Yeah, brilliant. And so, and are they saved kind of as like GPX files, or is it?
Yes, they are. Most of our longer rides are GPX files, and sometimes ride leaders find using GPX a bit of a hurdle because they're not familiar with Garmin's and stuff. So we don't make people have to use GPXs. If they want to use maps, that's absolutely fine. But it is just easier to kind of administer GPX files for most of us.
Yeah, so just for those who may not know, so GPX is the kind of the file type for the like online like GPS, like Garmin's and Wahoo's use, or Strava. Most services use GPS.
And we're going to use the winter months to do some workshops with people, so they learn how to use Garmin's and different files and different map applications as well. Yeah,
brilliant. Marianne, so you've got your hand up.
We do have a set of routes which ride leaders can use. They can propose their own rides as well and ride them and risk assess them. We also video record as many rides as possible and put them on YouTube so that ride leaders can actually see them, but also for riders who want to do their own rides, that they can actually judge if that route is suitable for them, or if they feel it's maybe a bit too difficult, so they can really see how much off-road, how much on-road, and all sorts, which is quite successful and has been very, very received.
Wow, that sounds really good. Yeah,
brilliant.
And we use Komoot for our routes, which people can follow us, and we can share obviously routes with the wide leaders, and yeah, that's how we communicate. But before we go on a wide, the route will be shared with all the wide leaders so that everyone has access to it, and we do want that the main wide leader has at least ridden the route once and is familiar with it before going on a wide.
Yeah, brilliant. And I suppose sort of, yeah, having those routes available as well, it's quite nice to sort of, often if you do a nice ride and then you want to go back and think, oh, what's that nice lane that I've not been down? I'm sure many of you, like me, when I go out on my bike, there's certain roads that I just never go down. Probably ridden past them 100 times, just never taken that right turn or whatever. Brilliant. So there's a sort of a message on, just going back to the chat from Derek about West Surrey Cycling Club. That's our local group here in Guildford. Sort of about, yeah, ride leaders tending to sort of naturally reveal themselves sort of from within. So that's definitely a very good way of recruiting. And yeah, it goes on to talk about recruiting new ride leaders, sort of especially due to COVID and smaller groups. And it's, from the sounds of the message, they're definitely not the only group that have reported that having smaller group numbers of 6 or or so in England at least has actually been quite encouraging for new ride leaders. I know that some groups operate the sort of turn up and ride sort of thing, so you could turn up on a Sunday morning or a Wednesday evening and have 20-25 people in your group, which is obviously quite daunting for a new ride leader. Whereas if you've just got 5 other people and you know who those 5 people are, it's probably a little bit more confidence inspiring.
I think Tom, that kind of legacy of COVID is certainly our ride leaders are kind of keen to almost keep that COVID number of 6 to a group if they can. Sometimes it's not possible, but they kind of feel that's a really good number. So that's.
I suppose the beauty of it now that kind of, at least in England, COVID is kind of, the restrictions are easing. It's sort of we can have 6, but a flexible 6.
Yes, that's it.
You can have a big 6 if you have a couple of extra sort of turn up. I suppose it does sometimes that can sort of having to sign in or log yourself into the ride first can sort of put a little extra barrier there. But yeah. Cool. So there's a few sort of questions or conversations about kind of COVID guidance. Sounds like, yeah, everyone knows what's going on. Just as a quick recap, yeah, in England it's groups of up to 30. Obviously, as I kind of mentioned earlier, we'd recommend sort of splitting groups after 12 to 15. So that kind of COVID limit is now beyond the sort of the normal times restrictions. I think someone quite rightly pointed out that especially indoors, sort of cafes and stuff, you'd have to drop back down to 6, and that goes for especially for kind of Scotland and Wales, where you have that organised sport exemption. Going into the cafes isn't really a sport, so you might have to sort of go in separate groups. And I've heard of some places being a bit less than impressed with groups of cyclists turning up in one big group, splitting into 2 groups, and then walking in. Obviously, that's for the sort of the business to police, but we've got to respect that. If they are caught sort of falling foul of the rules, then that's could potentially land them in trouble. But yeah, it kind of is what it is. Yeah, brilliant. Let's just see. I mean, are there any other sort of questions or any burning questions or things to discuss? This is sort of, there's no nothing off the table really. Something that's vaguely cycling related.
Yeah.
Vicky, did
Yeah. Sorry, this may have been discussed, but I've got a bike week question, if that's okay.
Yes, I can try and answer it.
All right.
If not, yes.
I'm just trying to get my head round the different levels of insurance and realise that a normal ride with normal members is a normal ride and insured fine. But then when you're going out to the public and recruiting people who are non-members, you need to class that as a special event and register that with yourselves in order for it to be properly insured. Is that correct, Tom?
That's right, yeah. So I think more or less everyone here is probably either an affiliate or a member group. So your ride leaders and sort of club officials, I suppose we could call them, are covered by that organisers liability insurance.
Yeah.
For these special events that are like just a regular sort of club ride, you don't necessarily need to register those.
Yeah.
But specifically for Bike Week, if you register it through the Bike Week website portal thing, that's kind of should be sufficient. I'd have to double check the ins and outs of the insurance. We have to be a little bit careful what we say, just because we're not licensed by the financial people.
Yeah, it's basically when you've got non-members. Sorry.
Yeah, so the ride leaders.
Yeah, it's recruiting members of the public. Yeah. Thanks.
Brilliant. I think Peter Giemba had your hand up at some point.
Yeah, I just wondered whether any of the people who are doing formal ride training include dealing with, it sounds harsh, in quotes, disciplining ride participants who are putting either themselves at risk or the rest of the group at risk.
Yes, I mean,
Tom, to some extent, how do you do that? Because it's clearly very sensitive. I mean, quite a lot of our members are sometimes quite affronted, even if you just warn them about a car approaching. They feel that's an intrusion on the conversation that they're having with the rider, the person next to them.
Yeah, I mean, is there anyone who could chime in on that? I think Mike.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point actually, because like you say, each group has got a whole mix of people in, from quite anxious people to quite headstrong people. So, if there is somebody that's not kind of riding the way we kind of like advise them to ride through our safe group riding guidance, then we as ride leaders do encourage ride leaders to try and pick it up, but to pick it up in a sensitive way, obviously. And if that's not taken on board, then obviously to mention it again. And then if they feel confident, then to take it kind of to deal with it, like pulling a person to one side or speaking to them after the ride. If they feel confident to do that and kind of then mention it to the ride leader group or our little steering group, that's fine. But if we find that, and at the end of the day, they are volunteers and whatever, but if some find that it gets a bit tricky, then I or one of the other steering group members would probably, and we have had to do that, would step in and support them in terms of, supporting them to try and make sure that people are doing things properly. And if they're not happy with that, then, and we have had an instance where somebody wasn't abiding by our safe group riding guidance, and we said, well, I'm sorry, but if you're not prepared to, because you are, like the person just said, you're not just risking your own life, you could be risking the lives of others, particularly in a group. Then we had to ask them, that if they weren't happy with that, then there's no point in cycling with us. So yeah, but that's the last resort. It's only happened once in 6 or 7 years. Generally everybody is fine, and people do get nudged a bit, and you need to ride a bit close to the curb and all the rest of it. So they do kind of they do marshal it to a certain degree. Yeah,
brilliant. I suppose that is kind of similar with like COVID as well. If for whatever reason COVID, or just if their bike is in an absolute state, or they're sort of a bit all over the place, then it's perfectly fine to sort of say to someone, what you're endangering the group, and we, I, the ride leader, don't sort of feel comfortable sort of having you on this ride.
Yeah.
I will actually just very quickly, we've actually got a copy of Mike's group's kind of group riding guidance. So I suppose just quickly run you through that. I mean, we've got very similar guidance, sort of Cycling UK versions, but it's just sort of a, you know, I suppose quite an easy way for you to sort of point to, you know, certain sort of bullet points to say, actually, you know what, you know, Bob, whatever, you sort of, you know, we quite clearly say you need a roadworthy bike or whatnot, you know, sort it out. Just a very quick scan through for you. It's all kind of, you know, fairly standard sort of group riding sort of procedures, but so having your own group's version is probably not a bad idea. We've got a very similar sort of page on our website, which please feel more than free to sort of, you know, copy and paste off of us. I'll find that in just a sec. I can see that Len and Patience have their hand up. Did you have something to add? You might be muted. I can't see you, Len and or Patience.
Can't you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
That's okay. There's just a few practical details about how we organise the rides. We find it sometimes useful to have a slip of paper to hand around to every participant with a telephone number of the leader on, in case you get separated, and also a description of the route that we're taking, and places where we might be assembling on the way to the coffee stop or whatever. There's also a point which has been made that we tend to separate into groups of not more than about 7 people, just to be courteous to the car drivers on country lanes, so that they can get past, and that's is usually appreciated. Our rides have just started this week, and I think the rides coordinator is having some difficulty in getting people to volunteer to the same level that they were volunteering before the lockdowns. I don't know if anybody else has been experiencing that or not. I think one of the problems is that people have got used to cycling in the small groups for the past 18 months, and also they've got used to choosing the days that they go cycling on, so they don't need to turn out in the wet. So those are the points I wanted to make. There's sort of more to do with the practical details of how you sort of manage the ride, but thought they might be quite useful.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's brilliant. Very helpful. I'm just trying to work out how I share our Ride Leader handbook, which is quite helpful. But particularly, yeah, your point on kind of having a sign in, sign out, some form of emergency contact details are very helpful. I know there's Fleet Cycling Group. They've found this online service where you get a little kind of QR code on an actual physical tag. I think it cost a few pounds, I think, sort of, and you get it permanently. And they've actually they were discussing subsidising it for their members, sort of, and asking everyone to, or including it as part of the group membership. That was it. So sort of the group membership is another couple of quid, but as part of that, you kind of get signed up to this sort of medical alert type thing. Yeah, perfect. So yeah, I've just popped that the Cycling UK Ride Leader handbook in there. Mike, are you happy for me to put your group riding guidance in there?
Yeah.
Just try and get answer to that as well. Brilliant. Perfect. So is there any other sort of points to raise, or very much an open room, open platform?
There are a couple of points I'd like to make, Tom, if that's all right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, good. Okay. We are struggling with. I suppose people have become quite sort of risk averse in terms of taking ride leader positions on the basis of the kind of responsibility and liability side of things, and so people are very happy to go on rides. They're very happy to be how to, where to go, but nobody really wants to take responsibility for herding the group anymore. And the group tends to be fairly anarchic, and some want to go and stop off for more coffees than others, and others want to go further or faster or whatever. But I mean, that's the stage we're at the moment. We're still feeling our way really after, and we're calling them informal rides, where we mostly don't have a designated ride leader, although we've got a lot of people in the rides who have previously led them before. Yeah,
brilliant, thank you. I can see there's a few issues with the link. What I'll do is I'll just post a link to on our website. We have a sort of ride leaders toolkit. Find the group's handbook there, but there's also we've got sort of template risk assessments. We've got printable signing in, signing out sheets. We've got COVID bits and bobs. We've got all sorts. So hopefully that's useful. Let's see, we've got another hand up from Sarah Wood.
Okay, well, as I said earlier, we're new to this. I've got a message from you concerning Assemble. We have three proper ride leaders and 2 assistant ride leaders, so that's 5 of us all together. Am I right in thinking we should all belong to Cycling UK to get the insurance?
So if you're a Cycling UK member group, so not for you, right? I'll just move on to affiliate groups in a sec. For member groups, you do, but obviously you have to be a member of Cycling UK to ride with the member groups. For affiliate groups, such as your group, Sarah, you don't need to be a member of Cycling UK to be covered by the ride leader insurance, but you do need to be a member, quote unquote member, of the affiliate group itself. So you'd have to be a member of Ride Rushmore.
Okay.
What that membership is kind of up to you. Some groups will have sort of a formal, paid membership type, with subs type scheme. Others, it might be you're on the sort of the closed Facebook group or on the WhatsApp group or something. It's just a way of kind of distinguishing between, these people are part of Ride Rushmore and every other cyclist out there. It's just some way of distinguishing.
Right, that's my first question. My second question is, I think the affiliation is under Jill's name, not mine, but I'm really bad with Assemble actually, but I'm better than she is. Are we allowed to have joint access to it?
Yeah, you can do.
Does that work?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes Assemble doesn't like shared. Yeah, but no, it should be fine. We can set you up with a joint account. It should be okay. What it doesn't like is 2 accounts using the same email address, which we sometimes get if someone has sort of, secretary at such and such.
Okay.
Sometimes that, but if we know about it, we can set it up. I'm sure there's.
Okay.
Yeah, we can set you up with either both of you with access or joint access. Or.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. If you drop me an email, we'll sort out tomorrow or whatnot. Perfect. Brilliant. So I think that kind of we're sort of. Oh, yeah, no, I can see a real life.
Just one more question, Tom. I might have misheard you, but you talked about a benefit for some groups if they put their membership fee up. But I understood under the constitution for members groups that we weren't allowed to charge at all.
No, so this was for an affiliate group who are sort of independent and do their own thing.
Yeah,
with the member groups, you can't require a membership because your membership fee is the Cycling UK membership fee. Although some groups do sort of ask for a few quid a year sort of as a donation, but obviously it can't be if you don't make this donation, you can't ride with us. It's more of an ask rather than a requirement.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah, brilliant. So I think we're kind of coming to a natural conclusion. Hopefully everyone's kind of found it useful. If you do have any other feedback, sort of what went well, what didn't go so well, or if you found this useful, or if it was sort of not the best use of time, please do let us know. I'd say a particularly big thank you to Mariam and Mike for kind of kicking us off. And then the next session we have penciled in is on the 16th of June, to speak, because we're in May all of a sudden. And we're going to be looking at, we're going to be joined by Lucy and Christina from our comms team, and we're going to talk a little about the Women's Festival of Cycling and how you can organise events, both as part of the Women's Festival of Cycling, but also just more general organising events open to the public, and particularly kind of focusing on like women's only rides. We're still sort of planning it. We decided on this morning. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled for that. That's kind of mid-June. And if we'll send out emails nearer the time, but if you would like to sort of speak as Mariam or Mike have, please do let us know. Or if there's any other kind of topics you'd like us to cover. We've also got kind of a session for actual ride leaders themselves on the cards, where we'll sort of hear from some experienced ride leaders and go from there. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us. It's still a bit light, so you can always nip out for a quick ride before you go. Brilliant.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks, Tom.